what you incentivize is more or less what you get. And we don't necessarily want them to get more leads. We want the juicy ones. We want the easy ones. We don't want them fighting for that $500 door, or, that lady's like, oh, maybe I could get painting. I don't know. Like I thought about it, whatever. And then like, they like, get the yes. And then you waste a lot of time calling leads that are useless. So we really want that A lead. Yeah.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What's up, everybody? Mike Gore-Hickman here, founder of PainterGrowth.com. You're listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. Trying to sound like a radio DJ here. I am joined here by Mr. John Morgan III, self-described bad business person, or at least was a bad business person, but now is operating a 1.7 and quickly growing business, painting business in the Okanagan in British Columbia. So what's up, John? Good to have you, man.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
So do you make like your girlfriend call you John Morgan III, or like do you just go by John typically?
So if my fiance heard that, she would say, not girlfriend, fiance.
Fiance, okay.
Yeah. She not too many people call me John Morgan III, but it actually is legally John Morgan III, which ends up being a hassle because like anywhere I travel, like like for government documents, it needs to be the third. And then if I'm in the airport, and it's like it always gets auto corrected to like cap locks I. So it looks like John Morgan Lee. So like. Yeah, it's actually been more of a hassle than anything.
Yeah. I mean, I have a hyphenated last name, and it's the same. Like it's hyphenated from like literally like 200 years ago in Ireland. No joke, it's crazy. But like WestJet, like the airline, doesn't accept hyphens. You're like,
yes, mine's the exact same. Like it just doesn't work. But like I said, it is legally that. So then it ends up being a hassle. Yeah.
Well, that's sweet, man. So tell me about your first year in business.
Yeah. So like how I got into it, or like just like the first year.
So you went in so you went in Student Works Painting, which is kind of a competitor to College Pro, which is no longer around, but like teaching university students how to run a business through a painting company. But you got into Student Works Painting, and it didn't go as well. Like you got a great business now, but it didn't go according to plan the first year. Tell me about that.
No, well, no, not at all. So because you used to be with College Pro, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're familiar with like the term like the preseason. So the preseason's from January until the end of April, and this was kind of the time, as a student painter, you'd mostly just be doing exteriors over the summer months. And so we call this the preseason, where you'd be knocking on doors and trying to market your business or whatever, and pre-book work for the summer. And so my preseason, which I came in, kind of talking big game, and was definitely way too confident, very arrogant, like just really sent it, as far as the way I talk to myself. And I went 6 for 36 for 6,000, which like it was, I remember there was like a metric at the time was that if you didn't have 10,000 booked, they wouldn't even open up a paint account for you, like, because like they were like, oh, this guy's
April
probably
1st or something.
Yeah. On May 1st. Yeah. May 1st.
May 1st,
when you started production. Yeah. Cause like, I mean, I effectively had like 1 week, like I worked 4 months to get like 1 week of work, like, so, no, it did not. So the bookings did not go well. And then,
So you're going into May with $6,000 of work, where most people are at like 50,000 or more work.
Something
so
like
how
that.
Did you handle that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I mean, I was kind of like completely delusional at the time. Like I've always been a fairly, I say cautiously optimistic individual. And I mean, you wouldn't have told me at the time that I wasn't like, I was very much still set that I was going to be, a top operator kind of thing. And, it kind of turned around like quite quickly, like around May. Like I just remember because it was kind of like Taco Tuesday, because I used to always go to Taco Time on Tuesdays. And on Taco Tuesday in my first year, I had booked like this $9,000 job, which might as well have been like $1 million job for me. Like it was just astronomical. And so it picked up a little bit from there, but I didn't end very well either. So.
Okay. Tell me about your first year actually running production.
Well, I mean, at the time I wasn't really, let's say, I didn't treat my painters very well. I didn't hire very well. And I was really fortunate to have like one painter in particular. Her name was Sarah. And she kind of just stuck with me. Like, I think she just like felt bad for me. Like she even like drove like one town over like every day, and like wasn't paying her very well. but she stuck around the whole summer. But if it wasn't for her, I mean, effectively I had no production, like the classic hiring your friends, yeah, it didn't go well. And then, not happy customers, not training properly. It was not a very good first year, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Tell me about your house from hell from that summer.
I don't know if I necessarily had like a house from hell per se, because like it was all so bad that like there wasn't. I mean, I remember actually. So at the very end of my first year, because I actually had done so poorly that I didn't make enough money to even go back to university. Like I had to like discontinue my operation, like, or going to school. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just make this like a full-time gig at this point. I'll just try and make this painting thing work. And the last job of the year, I was like, I had like barely enough money to like, because I didn't want to have to get a job during my the following preseason. And I had like just enough money, and I was going to finish one more job and get like one last final check. And I was going to have just enough money to like live through my preseason and maybe take on a little bit of debt to like try and like, really grow my business, And the last job of the year, bit of a 50-50 situation of what really went wrong, but nonetheless, I didn't get paid. And I had like basically had to like give him money back. So then I went from thinking I was going to have just enough money to get through my next preseason and grow my business to like dead broke. So that was how I ended my year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to end the year, right? Ton of momentum.
Yeah.
How
did you
what did you do that winter to kind of make it through?
Well, so I had convinced my stepfather at the time to let me live in so he lived in like this, like kind of near the water here in Kelowna, in like this really like 1940s build house. And I had convinced him, again, just cautiously optimistic. I was like, man, I'm like, if I don't have to pay rent this preseason, I'll knock on doors. I'll have enough money to live on. I think I can make like 100,000 this year. Like, I'm like, I can blow up my business. Like I can do this. Right. I'm like, but I got to live in your storage unit in the basement. So he had like this, like, it's like 1940s, like basement, like the ceiling, like I'm about 6 feet and like my head was just about hitting the ceiling. And in the back corner was like this, like fully concrete room, no lights, like no heater, like, middle of the, winter. And I lived in that storage, like basically this little storage, I remember like sleeping next to like a kayak, the sleeping bag.
Basically lived in a dungeon.
Yeah. I mean, it was like one step above homelessness. It was not pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's like doesn't sound like there's egress windows and like a fire escape plan.
No. It was not. It was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah. But
okay. So you're living there. You're eating a little bit of humble pie after this first year that didn't go well.
Yeah.
How many more years did you run a student works business?
Yeah. So I ran Student Works in total for 6 years. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So you've been running, and then now you're with ProWorks, and how many years have you been doing that?
This is my 10th year in business. So I guess 4th year with ProWorks. Yeah.
Okay. So we were probably close to the same years. I think I did College Pro from like 2010 to 2013.
I would have been right after you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't want to go through every single year what happened, but now you have 10 years of experience. Obviously, like lots of like you learn a lot just by doing things over and over and like that repetition. So let's talk about 2023. Like what was this year like, or last year, I suppose?
What was it like in what respect? Like
just describe the year. Just describe the year.
Well, it was an interesting year for me because I had it was the first year where I didn't actually sell most of my own work, So prior to that, like I guess the natural progression of a painting business, so last year was the first year I didn't sell some of my own jobs, and so I brought on a sales rep named Brady, and so that was kind of like a new like sense of freedom for me. So like production was like long ago kind of fully delegated more or less, and so last year was like a really like a new role for me, because in a lot of ways I was like more or less just a coach for my own business. I wasn't necessarily involved in day-to-day operations beyond just like walking him through how to run the business.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a really nice spot to be in, right? Where you're no longer like turning all the cranks, right? You're still pulling the strings, but you're not pressing all the buttons.
Yeah, although I mean, I would say like look, if the concept of that like sounds fantastic, and obviously it's great, but it introduces all new challenges, for your mindset and for your business. And like anything else, I mean, that in of itself is just another thing that you have to master, right? So it's not,
Yeah.
it's, I think that a lot of people get this idea that like this idea, like, like the being able to live on a beach in your business just kind of sends you mail money kind of thing. And it's not quite what it is.
I think that it can become that. You can be director level, like, board of advisors level, if you set up your leadership team in the right way and you have the right systems and compensation structures. But for most people, they'll never get to that level. It's just a matter of goals. I think most people don't have the goal to get to that level.
Yeah, certainly.
So one thing that a lot of people struggle with is when business is going well and they're making profit and they see that like monthly profit and loss. Oh, I made 20,000 this month. Oh, what I made, whatever, is a great feeling, but it's hard to justify the decision to bring on a full-time salary, which is going to like maybe cut your profit in half or in 3/4 or something, in order to buy back your time. So how did you make that? How did you justify the decision, or how did you kind of weigh the pros and the cons of that decision in your mind?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, right? Because I mean, even when you go, like the way that I kind of roughly view it, and these are rough numbers based on your business or based on your profitability, but up until about 500,000, I mean, you can sell and produce all your own work, like not necessarily do the painting yourself, right?
Run production and sell.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can be like your operations manager and your sales manager, and you could probably even market your entire business too. Like you wouldn't even need like to hire like a marketing team per se.
Yeah, it's like
But
40K
then
a month. That's like 3 painters.
yeah, exactly. Right. And then, but after that point, like, around, let's say 600 or so, you kind of like, there's like a dead man's land, like a no man's land in between like 5 to 750, where in a lot of ways it like bringing on an operator, because at least from the student works background or college pro background, we tend to be like pretty like, A-type, like charismatic, like salespeople. So we tend to delegate the production first, but maybe some people it's the reverse. But when you delegate production, there's that no man's land where you almost can't justify delegating production, because unless you get up to 750, you're really not going to make any more money. So at that time, when I brought on production, I had done like 467 or something like that. And I'd done that completely on my own. But I was like, man, like I need to basically like rapidly grow my business to like I need to get like past that hump. Like, otherwise it's barely worth it. Like if I'm going to do this, I need to fully do it. Right. And so it's kind of a similar idea with bringing on a sales guy, right? Like there's a no man's land, depending on how good of a salesperson you are, maybe around just after 1 million or so, like somewhere in there, because you have to be a pretty good talent, like a pretty talented salesperson, at least on residential repaints. We don't do any new construction whatsoever, or any renovation. So this is just strictly residential repaints, right?
A little bit of commercial repaint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, only repaint. Yeah, but no renovations, and no new construction. So bit of a different thing.
Sure.
But somewhere after 1 million or so, again, I had to make another huge leap and we had to rapidly grow the business to justify that increased overhead. And so, but I also had always been really interested like in investing in general. And so like, that's what I spend most of my time on now is like, like literally 40 hours a week is I just spend reading 10Ks. Like that's like my true passion is just reading. I've always that's always just been my dream. So for me, I was able to justify it in the sense that I've, made a fair amount of money over the last, decade. I've been, very frugal and whatnot. And so I've been able to justify it in the sense that because I can invest my own capital, I can make money with my time still. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I just bought back my time and I didn't, I'm just, doing nothing. Yeah.
Gotcha. So how many hours a week are you currently spending on your painting business?
I would say about 10 hours a week. Yeah.
Okay. 10 hours a week. And the goal this year, you're thinking you guys can crack 2 million?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Because we had done 1.7 last year just in Kelowna, and we didn't really go to West Kelowna at all. We'd been kind of the way that we like to run our marketing strategy is like really concentrate into certain neighborhoods and become like the painting company for that neighborhood, higher demographic. And so recently we had just expanded to West Kelowna. And so we're thinking that can give us a bit of a pop, alongside just some increased relationships with, property managers and things like that. So I think we could probably get to like about 2.2 somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the, running a business like that in 10 hours a week is awesome. What type of, I think meetings are a really important part of a business like that, especially if you're in, if you're trying to be, quite hands off, then meetings become very important. What's the like leadership meeting cadence that you have, and then what type of meeting cadence does your GM have with your PM and sales rep? Like, how do you guys stay in communication about plans and goals and outcomes?
Yeah. So I guess at like the highest level, so Brady, I guess you could say, is like the operator of the business now. Okay. And also the sales manager. So, and he's got a sales rep underneath him. And so I do quarterly meetings with just Brady. Okay. And this is more to review the finances of the company and kind of the direction and, where I see opportunities for us to put money back into the business to grow. Okay. So kind of, give them a bit of a direction that way. And then on a monthly basis, I would say him and I do like a deep dive into the actual day to day of like how the company's doing. And then on a weekly basis, I meet with him and the entire sales team on Mondays for about 3 hours. And this is the kind of the core of the sales side, at least, of the meetings, where we review all of their sales calls for the week. So like they call their leads to schedule estimates, and we call that an initial call. And this is one of the kind of critical aspects of our sales process. Those are about maybe anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes, depending on the depth of the project and how chatty the client is. So we nitpick those like you could not believe. Like we get into like, hey, like this word rather than that word, the voice, the tonality of your voice, like you put the voice inflection wrong, like it should be ahead, not ahead, So like, we get really in depth in those, review all their quotes for the week, that kind of thing. Okay. So this is kind of like the core of the sales. And then the actual sales team themselves, they're in constant communication with each other on a daily basis, like kind of just bouncing ideas off one another, et cetera.
Like group chat style?
Yeah.
Sales reps?
Correct. Well, kind of. So we have like 2 guys that are actually like selling, but then we have like 12 marketers as well, like door knockers and things like that, that range from maybe 10 to 20 hours a week on average, like each. And then we have what we call like a business development rep. And so this individual is just specifically targeting businesses, realtors, that kind of thing. So I would say the sales team and the marketing team in general is like about 15, but like I would say 3 core guys, Yeah. And then
knockers. I want to dig into that a little bit, but keep going.
I'm obsessed with door knocking. So I can chat about that forever. And then right after that, like on Mondays, we have a team meeting with the sales and the production team. Okay. And this is depending on the time of the year, this could be anywhere from, half an hour to a 2-hour meeting. Okay. And this meeting, I tend to just sit back. I try and not like jump in. Like I tend to be a very like aggressive, very controlling individual. So I try and sit back and just take my notes, and I try and, let them kind of do their thing. And Brady leads the meeting, and they kind of just discuss, how things are going, and basically any kind of communication between the production and the sales team. And then from there, Wednesdays, I do with all of our management team, I do a 1 hour. Well, it depends. Like some people are longer and some people are shorter, but about an hour per person I do. And this is the bulk of my work. So every Wednesday I spend about maybe 7 or 8 hours on the phone. And that's the bulk of what I do for the painting business is this critical coaching day. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much everything that you do for the business is just meetings though.
Yeah. Well, and the finances. I manage all of the finances of the company.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's really refreshing to hear that, because there's so many painting business owners who are kind of like anti-meeting, right? Like you ask them, hey, when was the last time you met with your production manager? Like, oh, like I saw him yesterday. Does that count? It's like, no, like we did a meeting with an agenda.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very much like, one of the things that I'm obsessed with too is like letting my team know like how much the meeting cost them. Like, hey, you guys all drove here in company vehicles, right? Like that's gas and time, right? And we're like, there's 5 people in this meeting, and all of you guys are paid well. So like this meeting actually costs us a lot of money. So like, let's be productive with this, right? I was
talking to just a real quick story on that. I was talking to one of our coaches, and he has a job as well for a fairly large recruiting organization, and they had an all company meeting with 10,000 people on it.
Oh yeah, it's incomprehensible. And
it lasted 2.5 hours. So I like did the math on average, like $30 an hour. I figured that it cost about $800,000 to hold that meeting.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so I'm very much aware of these things because like I said, I have like a bit of a, let's say more of like a financial mind, and so, but my team is very much aware of this too. Like we're very open, like everyone has access to all of the, the P&Ls, like like not our painters per se, but everyone in the management teams knows our revenue, our cost, our profit. Like we're very, like, I'm very transparent that way.
Yeah.
And basically everyone is, the production team tends to be like, even our painters are profit sharing, for example. Like even they're very much aware of like what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So there's not a single role in our entire company, with the exception of door knocking, which I think you'll find interesting.
Yeah.
Door
Yeah.
knocking is the only position that we pay hourly. Otherwise, every position, if it does have an hourly component, it's most of your income is going to come from performance. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm
great.
a
And you
huge.
gotta incentivize for outcomes. You don't just incentivize hourly.
Yeah, well, I like to not only incentivize for outcomes, but another thing that is very critical for someone like myself, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is it's actually loyalty. Like I've always told my team, like I'm never gonna nickel and dime you. Like like whatever I'm paying you, I can promise you it's the most I can possibly justify. And if I made an error, let's talk about it. But I'm very much a fan of like, let's say, like a retention wage, because for myself, I can't really, it's like, imagine if you were playing chess, right? And you went to go move your horse and it argued with you. You're like, what? No, like, no, I need this horse to move, right? And so I can't really, like, just based on like the way that I'm trying to run the company and where I'm trying to grow it, is I can't really afford to have turnover, or especially in the key positions. Like there needs to be a sustainability, right? There
Or
needs to be
push
a
back.
predictability. Yeah, like I'm obsessed with predictability and sustainability. Like I would much rather make less money, but have it be more consistent over time.
Totally.
That, to me, that's worth a lot more in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah. It's called a knight, not a horse. Just
Well, I don't play a lot of chess. There you go.
I'm big chess guy, so
Fair
anyway.
enough. I find
Yeah.
chess too deterministic, so that's why I don't play it.
You think it's deterministic?
No, for sure it is. Yeah, for sure. Well, like I prefer like I don't mind like two-player kind of board games, but I prefer if there's a slight variability in the results. Like I would prefer if it was like you like moved you say bishop. I would prefer if there was not 100% chance of it working, because that's my issue with chess, is that it's too deterministic in the sense that there's a correct move, right? And it's not quite like real life that way. Like in business, you make decisions given an uncertain outcome. So there's lots of uncertainty, and even you could make the right decision and get a bad result, right? And so I like games that have that aspect to it, which chess does
So
not.
to push back on that, there is an absolute right move, but the person
Yeah.
that you're playing is also imperfect. So
Yes,
you can play
exactly.
a good move that is not necessarily the best move, and if they don't necessarily see that best move, you can come up with like cool
Yeah,
ideas and
fair play.
strategies and attacking plans and like defensive
Yeah.
things, and you play open games, close. It's like there's so much creativity. I think you're underselling it.
One of my guys is very much into chess, and I played it during college, and I wasn't,
Okay,
like,
so
yeah.
you know it enough.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
So let's jump into this door-to-door thing, because we got a lot of people who do door-to-door, who want to do door-to-door. And so you're running a team right now. You got 12 door. I like to call them like neighborhood marketers, not necessarily like just like my marketing team, not necessarily door knockers, but whatever you call them. What's the setup like? How do you keep them motivated? How do you track their hours? Just like run me through the setup.
Yeah. So the setup is, so again, we try and retain people, right? So we, like I said, it's like there's a rotating average, if that makes sense. Like at any given moment, you might have like 6 to 7 guys that are gonna be, let's say, vets, and then there's like the more like incremental or marginal door knocker, you're kind of having to fill those positions more
Transients, yeah.
rapidly. Well, it's actually less about them leaving us, right? Because we do pay like an above average wage for our market, just for retention. Because again, it's
What's
like
your comp structure?
just hourly. That's it.
No incentive for estimates?
Zero. No. Well, because yeah, I actually don't want them to generate more leads per se. So we give them a very strict structure of like, hey, this is your pitch. This is, we call them snipes, but they're objection handles, but I don't know, we call them snipes. And so there's, like a trim snipe or a stucco snipe. And so here's the pitch, here's the snipes, and just do that. Like, and we train them a lot and we spend a lot of time on that. And we just prefer it that way, because I'm not wanting them to actually, like, what you incentivize is more or less what you get, and we don't necessarily want them to get more leads. We want the juicy ones. We want the easy ones. We don't want them fighting for that $500 door, or that lady's like, oh, maybe I could get painting. I don't know. Like, I thought about it, whatever, and then like they like get the yes, and then you waste a lot of time calling leads that are useless. So we really want that a lead. Yeah.
Okay. What have you found in terms of economics? Like, how much do you pay them an hour, and how many leads an hour do you typically expect from your team?
Yeah, so we pay them what I would say to be like an above average hourly wage, but our overall cost on them, like, so our customer acquisition cost, as in how much we
25
actually pay. Pardon me?
Like 25, $30 an hour, if you don't mind
In
me
there,
asking?
in there, in there, yeah,
Around
in
there?
there,
Okay,
in there.
okay.
And then, but our overall customer acquisition cost, so simply just how much we pay versus how much we actually booked, is about
Yeah.
3.5%, which is obviously incredible for
Yeah,
that.
3.5%. Yeah, great. If you can keep it
Yeah,
under 5.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we also do like crazy volume. Like, I would say if you were doing like a smaller business, like if you're just starting door knocking, I bet it would be even lower than that, right? Because
Mhm.
we're knocking on every single door in Kelowna like 5 times throughout the year, right? So like this is not like we're really wringing out that
Yeah.
rag, right? So we use a software called Sales Rabbit, though, so that we're able to actually track every single door they knock on. Gets a note, like, it has a little tag on it, like a little geo tag. It tells us whether or not the door knocker, we call them door knockers, was within 10 meters. So you can't cheat. Like, you can't, like, it'll actually tell them if they were geographically in the, like, next to the door when they actually marked it off. So that just
Yeah.
keeps everyone honest. It's always fun because we don't tell them that, and it's always fun and fun on the back end. And then we basically mark down like different types of interactions. Like, did they take information? Was it a hard no? Did they say come back later? Was it a lead? And so that way, when we go back to areas, we try and get like a certain market penetration. So we try and get 80% market penetration. So as in 80% of the doors answered. So we keep going back until we get that penetration. And so because the reps that go will know we have all of the data on all of Kelowna, every single door. We know everything about them, right? Every interaction that we've had with them over the last, however many, years.
Going back to
And
like your
so,
data mindset, right? That's what you like. It's like
correct, correct.
analytical.
But also it allows, again, capital allocation is like just really like the heart of what I really focus on. So it's like, oh, like this area, let's put some more money over there. Let's not put money over here. Let's put money there. Oh, this area, it's taking too long. Like, they're not knocking on enough doors per hour. Okay, let's send flyers over there, because now that's a cheaper source of marketing, and we know that that's about 10%. But if our customer acquisition cost in this area on door knocking is actually above 10%, well, then now it's cheaper to do flyers, right?
Mhm.
So we track everything, because I like to be efficient with my money. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding, man. That's so you track everything. What do you look for in a good marketer?
I mean, really, I think what I look for is someone, like you, like me. I mean, someone who's charismatic, positive, willing to take rejection. I mean, anyone that can basically show up with a smile on their face and just have high energy, and they can learn a script, you can make it work, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, for safety reasons, we tend to not hire as many females, just because you are on your own, and so that's the only disclaimer with that, is that it tends to lean male in general. We
Yeah.
actually hire a lot of high school students, because for high school students, this is as they say, the sickest gig, because they're getting paid, like I said, somewhere in that higher range. I mean, these guys are like showing up to, they probably take out cash at the end of the day, and they go to the school, they're like, bro, look how much money I have, because they're just stoked on it, and they're all want to be like Jordan Belfort, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you can pay above market, and it's obviously worth it. Like if you're at 3.5% cost of marketing.
Well, one thing we found about the high school students too is that if you can hire a high school student and have him door knock in the neighborhood he's from, he tends to know all of the people. They're like, "Oh, Jason, how are you doing?" Like, "Oh, I'm working for this painting company," and they're like, "Oh, I've heard of ProWorks Painting," and because we've been doing this for a decade, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
we've been putting some serious dough in our marketing for 10 years, and so we're very like. One thing that a lot of our marketers are surprised by is that when they're all nervous, whatever, and they knock on the first door, and the person's like, "Oh, ProWorks, how are you doing today?" Right? Because all of our guys are in full, like, I mean, like seriously professional gear. I mean, like these are like beautiful black jackets with ProWorks on them, toques, hats, t-shirts. Like, we get them
Yeah.
hand warmers. Like, we make this a cushy experience for them. Like, we want to make sure that they're showing up to work proud. Like some of these guys probably wear the jacket to high school. Like it's a nice jacket, right? Keeps them warm, that kind of thing. And so it's a very consistent look. So every single time there's an interaction at the door, we're not pushy. Like this is a very like old fashioned, like, hey, how you doing? Like, how are your kids kind of thing, right? We're trying to really build that brand. And our door knockers are always so surprised at just how, wow, yeah, no, like I don't need painting this year, but we used you guys last year. This was fantastic. Thanks for coming by, like, and they're like, what? This is crazy. So,
yeah, building up that market penetration over time is super helpful. So for someone in like a larger city, would you recommend them just like identifying a small neighborhood and just like hitting that 100 times over instead of trying to hit the whole city once?
So I'll put a disclaimer that I'm in like a mid-sized, juicy city, and so I don't have any like experience in larger town or like larger cities. So disclaimer that like I'm kind of speaking about something I don't necessarily know about. But yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I would definitely recommend niching down, right? I mean, I think niching down is always like, you hear about guys that are like, I do everything. I work all across the Okanagan. I'm like, bro, you do like $200,000 in work. Like no one's gonna know you if you did. So we're like, there's certain neighborhoods, just from my perspective, that we've done, like, this is no exaggeration. We have the stats, 60% of the houses in some neighborhoods, right? Like there's certain neighborhoods that like, not so much anymore because I haven't been, let's say, involved in the day-to-day of the company. But I mean, there was points where, and I'm sure this case with some of my marketers, like I would go knock on doors and they would be like, oh, John, how are you doing today? Like, that's how well they knew us. Right. So we're very obsessed with building a brand in certain postal codes in certain neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, that's wicked, man. And how about when it comes to recruiting, like finding marketers? Do you just like usually use your network, or do you like go into the schools and do like job fairs, or
No,
what do
we
you
just honestly, we never had any struggles with recruiting. I mean, we basically just we have a hiring process, and we post on all the different job boards. Indeed tends to just be the best. Let's face it. I mean, everyone. I think it has a near monopoly at this point on
Yeah.
advertising. At least here in Canada.
Yeah.
And we just post the ad. It's it's a well-written ad. It's professional. We look across. We analyze all of our competitors' ads, and we're always trying to, because in a lot of ways it is a competitive market, right? Like, there's a labor market. You're submitting a bid out there, right, for labor. You're calling for bids, right? And so we always analyze what the market rate is, and we make sure that we're above that. So you're already going to get a certain amount of attraction just based on that alone, and then from there you kind of whittle it down. So I don't know. We never really had any issues with it.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's a good way to do it. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
No complaints if it's working. The toughest thing with Indeed is just going through all the applicants, right? Seeing who's good and who's bad.
Yeah, although even then though, I mean, it takes about 15 minutes to go through. I mean, if you're competent and you have a pretty, I would say this, if you know what you're looking for, it doesn't take much more than 15 minutes to go through 50 applications, right?
Yeah,
like if you're going to spend 5 minutes reviewing an applicant, I mean, you can't scale that, right? I mean, we make quick decisions. We have a very specific demographic that we look for door knockers, and a very specific demographic that we look for in painters. Like we have like our winning formula, and that's what we go for. This guy's outside of it. No, there's a narrow range there.
Yeah. Love it, man. So when you, comparing where you started your company to now, obviously you have 10 more years of experience, but it sounds like you're naturally quite an analytical kind of numbers-based person. If someone is not a numbers-based person, what do you think are like the top, maybe 3 metrics that someone should be paying attention to in their business?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm natural by any stretch. I mean, I failed math class in like middle school. Like this is, this is obsession. This is hard work. There's no natural talent here. Like there's nothing else there. Like I was not God gifted in any respect. Right. I literally just read all of the accounting textbooks like 10 times. Like so anybody could do this as far as like having, you just willpower your way to actually just like, knowing what's going on. But so like outside, you mean like other like financial metrics to know or outside of financial
I think just in like, if you look at the entire business, the way to like maximize your understanding of what's going on in the company, it doesn't have to be 3.
I think like I'll speak to like the lower end, would say like the classic, like, hey, like maybe they're just hiring their first few painters, for the first time, or maybe they're starting to subcontract for the first time. Like they've been typically doing all their own painting, and maybe there's a, helper, like nothing's delegated per se, right? Like their wife's still doing the bookkeeping, that kind of thing, right? So to that guy, I think it's a pretty standard. I mean, painting businesses are not that complicated. I think the most important metric is, you have to delegate. So how many painters do you have? I mean, that's a really important metric, is how many painters do you have? Because all the time someone's like, how do I scale my painting business? I'm like, how many painters do you have? They're like, oh, 0. I'm like, cool. Well, I mean, that's how you scale a painting business, is you add painters. Like, it's, it's not a complicated one. And yeah, I mean, I would say that's like probably the most important metric. If someone was to ask me like, hey, John, I want to grow my business, I'm like, how many painters do you have? That's what I would ask. Yeah.
And how you get new leads, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, how much money you're putting into
your
your leads? How many door knockers do you have? Right. Yeah.
Do you do Facebook ads too?
I mean, a little bit. We do social media, but we don't find that we haven't found the results to be that compelling. So on social media in particular. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if you're willing to put in the time and the energy and the effort for a door-to-door team, in my experience, the return on investment is much greater than Facebook ads. Facebook ads is, if it works for you, it can be a lot easier and less, some people just don't like the concept of going door to door, and that's fine. But I think with that easy trade-off, you get just more expensive, higher cost marketing.
Yeah, well, there's free ways of doing Facebook, but it tends to, like, at our scale, we tend to prefer the paid advertising. I mean, obviously, you build a referral base and you build repeat clients, and that kind of, like, that's obviously a huge part of anyone's business. But we prefer them to tend to pay have the paid form of advertising, because they're much more scalable. I mean, like for me to, if I find like a Google ad that works or something like that, like to put more money behind that is much simpler than having to hire more door knockers per se, right? Not that much more complicated, but it still is. So
Yep.
we love paid advertising for sure. And it's also a competitive advantage of ours. I mean, I think, in a lot of ways, painting businesses kind of have like an anti-economies of scale. Like, in a lot of ways, you become less competitive with your pricing as you get larger. So that's why we've had to niche down to very specific neighborhoods, right? Because we have to match our value proposition with people that are looking for that value, right? That there's certain parts of the city that it just wouldn't make sense. But I think one of the few, competitive advantages that a painting business can have, a larger one, is the ability to effectively spend, an infinite more money than any of their smaller competitors, but have it still be a compelling percentage of their revenue, right? Like we probably spend, I mean, in order to catch up to us from an ad spend standpoint, you would have to basically either scale your business incredibly fast or just accept lower profitability for a series of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. If you had to go back to year 2, not year 1, because like you learn a lot of stuff in year 1, but say year 2 of your painting business, what do you know now that you wished you knew then?
That the people are the most important aspect of this business. Like your customers, your like it's not about you at all. It's about your customers. It's about your employees, right? Yeah, the people.
And how does that impact your day-to-day decision making?
I mean, for myself in particular, I just, when I see how a lot of business owners treat their employees, or how they treat their customers, it's just it's a short-term mindset. They're trying to squeeze every dollar they can out of everyone, their customers, their employees today, right? Like how much money do I make on this job? Not how much money do I make on the year, right? They're arguing with the customer over something that's like so trivial. It's like, no, man, like just like put the customer first. Like make this like there's almost no amount of money you could pay me to have I mean, I don't even know what the number would be. It would have to be enough that I would never have a painting business, because I would never mistreat a customer. Like we're not willing to, like, profit is an irrelevant number if it comes in exchange for a bad experience for one of our painters or a bad experience for the paint store. Like even, how my painters communicate with the paint store, be respectful. Like, they provide a very important service to us. So just treating people and just, being a good person. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but I mean, it's like, if you do good, you get good. Like it's such a simple idea, but that was something that I learned very, very quickly in my career, was that I have to be people first. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, like if you had a homeowner like get cold feet and ask for a deposit refunded, you wouldn't be like, oh, fine print says no refunds. You'd be like, sure, let us know when you're ready.
There's a lot of nuance in that particular one, but yeah, I mean, sure. The way that we
I went for the jugular right away.
No, I mean, I would say, like, like in human, I mean, if it was just a cold feet kind of thing of like, hey, like, we can't afford to do this or something like that, then yeah, like I always tell people, we don't make money off your deposit. Like our goal is to not hoard your deposit and like hold you hostage. Right. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of nuance to that, but yeah, we're not trying to make money off people's deposits for obvious
Totally.
reasons.
Yeah. If anything, it just locks in the schedule and
Yeah, exactly. Right. But there's obviously nuance to that. Yeah.
for sure. I mean, any like pieces of advice other than treating people right? Any pieces of advice for someone who's say like, at that 500K level and just like struggling to scale up? Like if you were in that position now and you're just like stuck at 500, what would you do to get to the next level? How would you look at your business? How would you problem solve it? What would be your decision-making matrix to move up?
And I can promise that Mike didn't tell me to say this because I don't even know Mike, but I would hire Mike. I would hire someone like you. I've been very fortunate that this entire time I've had a coach. Like that's one very important thing here is like I've had the same coach for the entire decade, right? His name's Corey Bartram. And in a lot of ways, he was like a father for me, and I had I still do. I mean, the guy's coming to my wedding. Like, I have a very good relationship with my coach. And, in a lot of ways, I view books as coaching, like, I mean, like in a lot of ways, all it is just consuming information. Right. And, coaches are kind of like an interactive book. Right. And so I would hire a coach. I mean, I think if you want to go from just being, a painter to having a painting company, why would you not hire a coach? Like the cost benefit is just absolutely like, I don't know how much you charge and I don't know how much, but the amount of jobs you have to sell to justify the cost and the mistakes that you're going to save. I couldn't imagine having to do what I just did if I didn't have Corey. It just, it'd be, yeah, no. Like that sounds like a nightmare. Yeah.
Wise words, man. I agree. I think that your business is never too big or too organized or too profitable for a coach. I have 2 coaches right now, actually. So
yeah, same. I mean, I still have coaching to this day. I mean, anything. Yeah. I mean, like we have a relationship coach, like my fiance and I. You know what I mean? Like, and I have a personal trainer. Like, I mean, every aspect of my life, I have a coach in to some degree. Right?
Yeah.
So
everything that you want to optimize, everything that you want to be better in, you can absolutely hire a coach to help you do that.
And finding the right coach too, right? Yeah.
For sure. Well, wise words, man. I appreciate you coming on. I think that 2.2 million this year is going to be in the bag for you if that's what you want to do, right? I think if you set your mind to it, you can definitely achieve that. And congrats on the business and the success. And dude, it's great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.